They are in the auditor's manual. Okay. Sorry, I gotta stop sharing. Okay. And now, I did it with 1 minute to spare.
Cool. I'll attend to Wes's time.
I know. So let's introduce Wes Bennett, Department of Local Government and Finance Commissioner. Let me unmute you. Wes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, he's faking us out. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it. Good content, very good content so far. Just wanted to take a few minutes before Fred comes on after me, right, ladies? Is that a thumbs up?
Robert comes on.
Robert, okay, Robert comes on. So Fred's this afternoon, right?
I got out of it all
Okay.
together.
I think it's just Robert.
That was last year's agenda, okay. Anyway. Thanks, Ricky, Lori, for putting this on, and certainly want to thank Auditor Fox and your leadership team. They've certainly been fully engaged over the last several months, and in the weekly meetings that we've been holding, and the state agencies and the auditor's office. Paul and Dave alluded to it this morning that the level of communication collaboration has been at an all-time high, and it will continue to be. As you say, we don't have a playbook for this, so we're doing our best to handle your questions, to handle your suggestions, to work hard to anticipate what you need. And as I said, we've been working together to address your concerns and issues. I want to touch real quickly before Robert comes on. Budget workshops will also be virtual this year. So more information will be coming out about that this week and through the coming weeks. I would encourage yourself, I would encourage you and your commissioners and council and department heads to give yourself plenty of time to get through the adoption, the budget adoption process. Certainly putting together, hopefully you've already put together, I've seen several media reports where local units of counties, cities, and towns have put together their budget calendar. So if you haven't done that, please get on that as soon as possible. We've had an extensive array of webinars for training and continuing education. We will continue to hold those. We've had we're having four in May alone. So check out those webinars, Budget 101, Gateway, on and on. So we're answering your call for more training and continuing education. I know that several of your counties host my staff and providing working space. We appreciate you. I appreciate you doing that and us having the ability to work in your location. I want you to be assured that we will continue to respect your local protocols and policies as it relates to us working in your building. So whatever those are, we will continue to respect those protocols and policies. Going down my notes here. Dave alluded to it. I know Dave alluded to it earlier today, and I want to reiterate how much we appreciate the responsiveness that the county auditors and many others have made when it comes to the data that we've been asking for. It's very difficult to make decisions without good data, and so it's good to hear that from Julie, and I've heard from Nancy here in Hendricks County that at least our property taxes are on pace, or at least in those two counties, they're maybe slightly ahead. So again, thank you for responding to us and our request for data, because without that data, it's difficult to make good decisions. So I know that's burdensome. I know we're being asked for a lot of data from across the street in the governor's office, budget agency, even between agencies ourselves, the Department of Revenue and so forth. But that data is very important to us and to you, so we can make the best decisions on everyone's behalf. You all know, it goes without saying that local units, including yourselves, will be struggling for revenue. Our message, my message to local units, whether it be libraries, townships, you've heard me say it to you and your colleagues, well, cities and towns, that you should be somehow, I don't know what regular means, but consider setting up regular meetings with your local units there in your respective counties. I think this is going to help you manage the message. It's going to help you manage the request for information that they have, and it's going to develop that team effort and collaboration that you all need to share with one another. So I would encourage you. I don't know what that looks like in your county, but try to set up regular meetings, and this will help you manage those requests for information. Finally, I would say that 60 days ago, I was wondering how we were going to handle and manage the operation here at DLGF. 60 days ago, I can imagine you were probably wondering the same thing. What is it going to look like 60 days from now? Well, 60 days from now is here. We know the answer. The answer is we can do it. We can do it together, and we've done it. And we can do the next 60 days, and then we'll do the next 60 days after that. So you all have done a remarkable job. That includes the Auditor of State's Office, the State Board of Accounts, our staff, your staff at the county level have done a remarkable job. And so I want to, again, express my appreciation and sincere gratitude for everything that you do. And I would just leave you with kind of just a short quote from a gentleman by the name of Les Brown, who is a motivational speaker, and he's a former radio and TV personality. And he's quoted as saying that our ability to handle life's challenges is a measure of our strength of character. So as I know each and every one of you, the strength of your character has certainly been demonstrated over the last 60 days, and I know it will be over the next 60 days and 6 months. So wish you Godspeed. Thank you for having us. Ladies, nice job. We'll log off and listen to Robert. Thank you all very much.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, am I coming through pretty clear?
Yep.
Okay, let me get my...
Oh, I love this topic.
Okay, well, it didn't, hold on.
Robert, I've been waiting for this for 3 years.
Okay, well, that's good, because I'm trying to get this stuff taken care of. Why is this not working?
Click the presenter. Do it again, and then click the presenter.
Well, yeah, I'm clicking on sharing my screen.
Okay.
And I thought I had my... Oh, I think it's because I don't have this starting from the beginning. There we go.
And go ahead and click display settings at the top.
And then switch it over.
Yes.
We went through this the other day.
Yes.
There we go.
There you go.
There we go. All right. Well, my name is Robert Norris. I'm a field rep for the Department of Local Government Finance. I joined the department back in 1989 when we were still called the State Board of Tax Commissioners. So that kind of tells my age here. So for 5 years of the time between then and now, I did work for South Gibson School Corporation as their business manager. But I guess I loved budgets so much that I had to come back to the department so I could work with all you guys. At this point, I cover 10 counties in the southwest section of the state. Most of my counties either border the Ohio River or the Wabash River. So I'm right down here in the far southwest corner. Today, I would like to go over the new Form 4B that we're going to be using this year for the 2021 budget season. There will not be any time for any questions and answers during this presentation because of the time limit that we have. But if you do have any questions on any of this, you can contact your budget field rep, and they should be able to assist you with any questions that you have. Today, I would like to go over the new Form 4B, or I'm sorry, just went over that. This presentation will focus on the current Form 4B and its limitations, and then we'll move on to the new Form 4B and what advantages we'll have with it. And then the last part, we'll discuss the best practices. So let's start a little bit about talking about the purpose of the Form 4B. The Form 4B is basically the heart of the budgeting process. As you look at this slide here, you can see over to the right or over to the left, we have our input forms. These are the forms that you're going to be filling out, such as the current year financial worksheet, the debt worksheet, the Form 1, which is your budget line items itself, and your Form 2, which is your miscellaneous revenue. And once you get those all filled out, a lot of that information gets pulled into the Form 4B, basically lines 1 through 10. And then once it gets pulled in there, then this is where we will actually calculate the property tax and the tax rate, or the property tax rate and your levies. And then once that all happens for all your funds, then that the property tax levy and rates will then get pulled to the forms to the far right, which is the Form 3 and the Form 4. And the Form 3 is the notice to taxpayers, so that's going to give them the budgets and the levies that you're going to be asking for. And the Form 4 is what your board is going to be, or your council is going to be signing, that has your budgets, levies, and rates that you've adopted. If we were looking at a more structural thing, there'd be this flow chart. So again, this is the same information, just laid out in a little different template. So at the top, again, you're going to see your forms. As you fill those out, these are forms that you're going to need to fill out first before trying to complete the Form 4B. But again, your current year financial worksheet, the debt worksheet, if you have any debt, the Form 1, and the Form 2. That gets pulled down into the Form 4B, where we will then calculate the tax rates and tax levies. And then from there, it flows down into the Form 3 for the notice of taxpayers, and your Form 4 for the ordinance or resolution that your council will sign at the budget adoption meeting. The format of the Form 4B dates back to the 50s. I'm not that old, but it was this way back in '89 when I first started. But due to changes in the budgeting process, the form has taken small changes over time. But in most part, the form has remained the same for about 70 years. So the form is divided into 3 distinct sections. Section 1 is for the expenses from July 1 to December 31st of the next year. In other words, 18 months worth of expenses. Section 2 is the funds on hand other than tax levy, such as your cash balance, taxes to be collected by December of this year, and your miscellaneous revenue. Again, this is the cash and revenues for an 18-month period from July 1 to December 31st of the next year. So, and then Section 3 is where the proposed levy and rates are calculated, and then that ends up giving you your operating balance, which would be your cash on hand after this 18-month period is up. Okay, here on this slide, we'll look at the detailed information for the first two sections of the current Form 4B. Lines 1 through 5 represent the expenses for the 18 months period. Line 1 is the budget, which through the detailed information that you entered on your Form 1, that comes in from that Form 1 and the 4A. And then if you're a school, line 1A allows you to show your transfers that you'll be making. Line 2 is the remaining expenditures from July 1 to December 31st of the current year, which is calculated on the current year financial worksheet. So as you look at this, you'll see over here in the middle of the page what forms these things are coming from. So you'll see a lot of it comes from the current year financial worksheet. Line 3, that's where any additional appropriations that are planned for the last half of the current year are being put in there, again, from the current year financial worksheet. Lines 4A and 4B represent temporary loans that will be paid before the end of the year or the next year if it's an emergency exists. And again, coming from the current year financial worksheet. Line 5 is the total of lines 1 through 4B, and that represents that 18 months worth of expenditure. The next section is our revenue sources. So line 6 is the June 30th cash balance. This is how much money you have on hand, including any investments as of June 30th. This information, again, is coming from the current year financial worksheet. Line 7 is the taxes to be collected by December 31st of the current year. We also refer to this as your December settlement. Again, coming from the current year financial worksheet. Line 8A and 8B are your miscellaneous revenues. And again, this is for the for an 18-month period. This is revenue other than property taxes that are listed on the Form 2. And that then comes in here to the Form 4B. 8A is revenue for the period of July 1 to December 31st of this current year. 8B is going to be the revenue for all of the budget year, which would be 2021 in this case. Line 9 is the total of all your revenue sources. And again, that's for an 18-month period. Or that, yes, for that 18-month period. Then we go down to line 10. This takes your expenditures on line 5 and subtracts out the revenues on line 9 to see whether there is sufficient funds to support the expenditures or if a tax revenue is going to be necessary to fund your budget. So in this example, you can see that the unit wants to spend $14.7 million on line 5, and they have revenue of the $9.2 million on line 9, which is not enough to cover the expenses, so they would need to raise $5.5 million on line 10 to be able to fund the expenditures that they're wanting. Okay, the bottom section of the Form 4B is the most complicated portion of the form. And this is why a lot of units like to come in and see us and have us kind of assist to come up with some of the numbers. Line 11 is the operating balance, but this is actually the last line that we really calculate. So we'll get back to that here in a minute. Line 13A is a line that has outlasted its purpose. We no longer use this line. So for all units in the state, this would always be a 0. Line 13B is used for levy freeze counties, which there's only 12 counties in the state that have this. So if you are one of the units in one of these 12 counties, you will enter the amount that you get on for that there. If you're not one of those counties, one of those 12 counties, then you would get and put a 0 in there. Line 15 is reserved for the department for levy excess. So this will always be a 0 for the units. We do not want the units to try to put the levy excess in, because we do not want the levies to be advertised and adopted lower than what they should be. The department will come in and then put that in when we actually work the budget. Oh, sorry, I went through that too quick. Line 16 is the property tax levy to be raised. So this amount represents the levy that you will be advertising and adopting to help fund your budget. And then line 17 is the tax rate. This is basically calculated by taking your levy divided by the net assessed value, and then timesing that by 100. Now let's go back to line 11. The department is called upon to balance the unit's budget. By looking at line 11, we can tell if a budget will need to be balanced. The department cannot approve a budget if line 11 is a negative. So in this case, we are showing a 0 operating balance, so we can approve the budget, but at the end of this budget cycle, meaning December 31st of 2021, the unit then would start 2022 with no money, to help for their expenses in the first 6 months of 2022, because they're not going to get their June settlement until June. So this is a very important line, so that you know whether, what kind of monies you're going to be starting out with. The optimum scenario would to have an amount on line 11 that would give the unit a cash balance to start the next budget cycle with. And then at the bottom of this form is the property tax caps that we have to deal with. This is pulled from the Form 1 and Form 4A. This is where the unit is reporting the amount of levy that they expect not to collect because of the tax caps. Okay, the other place a unit will interact with the Form 4B is on the 1782 notice. When we send out the 1782 notice, inside there is a fund report, and it lists all the units Form 4Bs on, in some cases, one page. I think we get 6 funds per page, so if you have more than 6 funds, then you'll have several pages. But it's for the funds that only the department has to approve. The same information is on the report, except for the property tax caps that they're listed in a different place. Because of the programs we were using and so forth, we had to put the levy or the tax caps on line 1B. And this kind of introduced the concept of a gross budget and net budget. The gross budget was the budget that you were asking for before the tax caps came out of there. This was basically the only way that we could show this with the current things that we were running. So in this case, lines 1A through 5 is our 18 months of expenses. Line 6 through 9 is the 18 months of cash and revenue. And line 11 through 16 is where the calculations of the levy rates and operating balances are. Okay, so just to recap what the Form 4B has been, now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the new Form 4B template. So this is now what we're going to use. With the template that dates back as far as the current Form 4B does, the department did not take making changes lightly. We wanted to make sure to create a better form. One that provided more information to the unit. It needed to be improved. Otherwise, we would just use the same form that we're accustomed to. So there was 5 things that we wanted to accomplish in this. Number 1, we wanted to use the same source material for the new template. What that means is when you examine the Form 4B, we wanted to lay out the same information we already had without creating any new forms or without creating any new reporting requirements. Number 2, we wanted to present the revenue and expense information chronologically. In the existing form, we have the 3 sections, one for 18 months of expenses, one for 18 months of revenue, and one for calculating the levy rates and operating balances. On the new form, we'll still have 3 sections, but the first section is used for revenue and expenditures for the last 6 months of the current year. And the second section will look at the revenue and expenses for the 12 months of the actual budget year. By separating it, we can examine the revenue and expenditures chronologically, and it gives us a better sense of the position the unit is in through the 18-month cycle. Number 3, we wanted to eliminate the concept of the gross and net budget. We wanted to find a better place to put the circuit breaker impact so that it didn't affect the budget amount. And then number 4, we wanted to make sure the operating balance was in a much better position so it's easier to find and easier to understand. And then the last, number 5, we wanted to create a revenue-first approach for proactive budgeting. This means we wanted the unit to know how much cash and revenue they have so they know how much they can spend. If you only have $100,000 in cash and revenue, then there's no need to try to do a $200,000 budget. To look at it another way, the Form 4B will have 3 distinct sections. Section 1 will be the current year. Section 2 will be the budget year. And then Section 3 will be the data entry and the tax rate calculation. In the current year section, the time period will be from June 30th of 2020 to December 31st of 2020. This section will be divided into 2 subsections. We've got the first subsection A will be the cash balance and revenues, and then subsection B will be the expenses. So again, we're going revenues first instead of expenses first. In the budget year section, the time period will be from January 1, 2021 to December 31st, December 2021. This will also be broken down into 2 subsections. Subsection A is for the revenues and subsection B for expenses. This section will also have 2 columns for each subsection. The first column for the advertised amount, and the second column is for the adopted amount, just like the old Form 4B had. And then the third section will be the data entry and tax rate calculation. Because of the amount of information on the form, it will take several slides here to cover all of it, so we'll take a look at it by section. So let's go ahead and take a look at the current year section first. All right, so this represents the current year section. As shown in the dark blue at the top, the time period covers July 1, 2020 to December 31st of 2020. You can see in subsection A, this covers the cash balances and revenues, and subsection B, the expenses. Okay, let's break these subsections down then. In subsection A, we will start with line 1, which is your June 30th cash balance. This does include any investments a unit has in the fund as of that same time period of June 30th. This value is pulled from the current year financial worksheet, and then on the old Form 4B, this used to be line 6. So with this unit, we're starting off with a cash balance of $1.5 million. Line 2 will be your property taxes to be collected, also known as your December settlement. This is also information that is coming from the current year financial, and on the old Form 4B, it was line 7. So in this case, this unit is expecting to collect $1 million. The third line is the miscellaneous revenue, which comes from your Form 2, column A. On the old form, it was line 8A. And so again, they're expecting the last 6 months to get $2 million here. And then line 4 is the total cash and revenues. We just add lines 1 through 3, and that gives us our total monies available. In this case, for this unit, if they didn't spend anything the last 6 months of 2020, they would have a cash balance of $4.5 million at the end of the year. Okay, in subsection B, we'll look at the expenditures from July 1st of 2020 and December 31st of 2020. Line 5 is the amount of necessary expenditures for this time period. This is what's left of your appropriations. In some cases, people think, well, this is what I'm going to spend, but what we really want here on this line is what your budget minus your first 6 months expenditures come out to be. So that's what you're legally allowed to spend the last 6 months. So in this, this used to be, or of course, this comes from the current year financial worksheet, and this used to be line 2 of the old Form 4B. In this case, they have $3 million left to spend. Line 6 is for additional appropriations that might occur during the last 6 months. Once again, comes from the current year financial and was line 3 of the old Form 4B. Now, line 7 is the total amount from lines 7A, 7B, and 7C. This is the amount of outstanding temporary loans and transfers that a unit might be doing the last 6 months, or what they owe back. This amount will come from the current year financial worksheet again. Line 7A are the outstanding temporary loans and transfers out, which was the old Form 4B's line 4A. And then line 7B at this point is reserved for future use. So nobody will use, no amount should be in 7B. And then 7C is reserved for schools to report transfers that they're allowed to do. 7C used to be line 1A for schools on the old Form 4B. Line 8 is a subtotal for the expenses. So in this example, when we add up lines 5 through 7, you get total expenses of $3.5 million. Now, when looking at this, you got to be careful that you don't really add in lines 7A, 7B, and 7C, because those are being totaled on line 7. So when you look at this, you kind of look at it and say, well, wait a minute, the math doesn't add up. But we're only adding lines 5 through 7. Line 9 is going to represent the estimated December 31st, 2020 cash balance. This is calculated by taking line 4, your total cash and revenues, minus line 8. So in this case here, the unit will have $1 million cash. So you can see in this case that they started out with 1.5 million in cash, and after they spent and got all their revenues, they ended up with $1 million. So they did spend $500,000 more than they brought in. So their cash actually went down. Okay, so just a quick recap. For the current year section, we started with June 30th cash balance. We added in any revenues for the last 6 months, and then we subtracted any anticipated expenses for the last 6 months. This brings us to the estimated cash balance for December 31st, which tells us how much funding or excess cash is available for the following year. Okay, so like I said, in this example, we showed that the unit started with a June 30th cash balance of 1.5 million. They ended with a December 31st cash balance of 1 million. This tells us that the unit spent 500,000 more than they brought in. The department does not have a position whether this is a right move or a wrong move. We just want to make sure that on this form we're giving you a spot that shows the unit where they stand for the last 6 months. A unit will be able to see that their cash balance, what their cash balance will be doing from June to December, and then be able to make plans whether they need to start reducing spending or not do anything during that time period. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the budget year section. This is the second section of it. As you can see at the top of the blue section, this represents the budget year 2021. So this is January 1 through December 31st of 2021. The first subsection is for revenues, just like we saw in the current year section. The second subsection is for the expenses, and the third, again, is for the operating balance in calculating the levy. Since we have said in the past that the bottom line is the bottom line is the operating balance, which was line 11 of the last Form 4B, we decided that it really needs to be the bottom line, and that is going to be line 18 of the form. So you can see where you end up instead of having to go back to that line 11. And then at the bottom of the form is where you're going to see the assessed value in the tax calculation for the tax rate. One other thing about this section, it's going to have 2 columns, unlike the first section, and one is for the advertising amounts and one is for the adopted amounts, just like the old Form 4B had. Now let's take a look at the revenue section here. Line 10 is reserved for the DLGF application of levy excess. So just like on the old Form 4B, this is for the DLGF. All units will have a 0 in this line when they're actually doing their calculation. This used to be line 15 of the old Form 4B. Line 11 is the property tax levy. This used to be line 16 of the old Form 4B. The unit will enter the property tax levy that they wish to impose, and hopefully that's what will be approved and certified by the department and their council members or board members on the budget order, as long as the unit stays within their maximum levy. There will still be the ability to calculate these Form 4Bs either by levy, rate, or operating balance in Gateway, as it has had in the past. Line 12 is our property tax cap impact. This is the significant change of this form from the old version. In the old version, we subtracted the tax caps from the gross budget to come up with a net budget. So we were actually applying the tax caps to the appropriations. In this new version, we are applying the tax caps as a negative adjustment to the revenue like it should be. This will allow the tax caps, or circuit breakers, as it's known also, to be removed from the Form 1, So the units will now be able to apply just the actual budget instead of having to worry about, are we using the gross budget or the net budget, so forth. Line 13 is for the miscellaneous revenue for 2021. This still comes from the Form 2, column B, as it was in the old form, but on the old Form 4B, it was line 8B. Now it's line 13. Then line 14 is the total revenue for the budget year. So in this example, you can see that the unit wants a tax levy of $2.5 million. They expect a loss from circuit breaker in the amount of $300,000. And then they anticipate receiving $4 million in miscellaneous revenue for a total of $6.2 million in their revenue for 2021. Okay, now for this expense subsection, line 15 will be the 2021 budget estimate. This will continue to come from the Form 1 as it has in the past. The difference, it will be just a standard budget. It will not have to be a gross budget like it was in the past. On the old form, it was the line 1 is where that was located. The amount will no longer, again, have the tax caps added as it has in the past. Line 16 is for the outstanding temporary loans and transfers. This is a total line for lines 16A, 16B, and 16C. And just like in our first section with 7A, 7B, and 7C, the line 16A is for the transfers out and outstanding temporary loans. Line 16B is being reserved again for future use, so nothing should go in there. And line 16C is for the schools to report their transfers for 2021. Again, this information comes from the current year financial worksheet and was line 1A for the transfers for the schools and line 4B for the outstanding temporary loans on the old Form 4B. Line 17 is the total 2021 expenses, just total lines 15 and 16. Again, be careful not to add in line 16A, 16B, and 16C since they are being totaled up on line 16. So in this case, the unit wants $6 million budget and plans to transfer $1 million, so they have total expenses of $7 million. Line 18 is the operating balance. This used to be line 11 of the old Form 4B. This represents the cash balance at the end of 2021. This is calculated by taking line 9 plus line 14 minus line 17. If the line 18 is a negative number, the budget would need to be cut or additional revenue found. If it is a positive number, then the budget would be funded. Whatever amount ends up on line 11 will be what the unit can expect to start off with in 2022 budget year before getting their tax draw in June. Okay, at the bottom of the form, we will continue to present the assessed value and tax rate. The assessed value used to be located at the top right of the old Form 4B. We have now located it at the bottom where the calculation of the tax rate is, so it's kind of in a better position. The last line will be the tax rate, and that is calculated by taking your line 11, which is your property tax levy, and dividing that by the assessed value, and then taking that. The tax rate is per $100 of assessed value. So as a recap, the budget section or year section will look at the total year revenues, including a negative adjustment for circuit breaker. It will subtract expenses and will add in the ending cash balance from the current year section. So whatever you ended up the current year section with, it's taking that cash and then adding that in with the revenues and expenditures for the full year. This will give us an operating balance which will be estimated ending cash balance that will be available for cash flow purposes or to fund deficit spending. So in viewing the entire Form 4B, when we look at everything in this example, the unit started off with the June 30th cash balance of $1.5 million, and they spent down that balance by $500,000. So they started out 2021 with just $1 million in cash. During the budget year, they spent $800,000 more than they brought in. So since they had that million, they spent $800,000 more. That left them with $200,000 on their operating balance. So this example here is showing that this unit is in deficit spending. They're actually spending more than they're bringing in, and it's causing their cash balance to keep decreasing. And again, the goal here is not to say if this is good or bad, but to give the unit information so they can see where they stand and if any action needs to be taken to balance their expenditures versus their revenues. Okay, the next section I want to look at is the data entry section. Even though a lot of the information is coming from the other forms, there is still some information that will need to be input manually. This information would be the net assessed value, or the NAV, the property tax levy that you're wanting for the fund, the estimated circuit breakers that need to be put in as a negative. And then also for schools, we need to know, then they're going to need to enter their school transfers for their, show what those are. So we'll work now through each one of those pieces of information. The assessed value is pretty straightforward. You will enter the AV here. When trying to figure out what amount to put in for an AV, you should always put an amount less than the actual. Okay, so usually during budget workshops, we'll say that we probably ought to use 85% of the prior year as a good starting place. If you're aware of something that's going on in your taxing unit or taxing district that would reduce your AV by more than that 15%, then you may want to even go lower than the 85%. And what this does is it artificially increases the tax rate so that when you adopt your Form 4, which has the tax rate on there, we're not, if the assessed value does go down, we're not stuck with that lower rate. So it is there to protect you a little bit. The method section tells the form how to calculate the amount you want. These methods are by either the rate, the levy, or the operating balance. For most funds, you'd probably want to use the levy. A lot of times for debt funds, that's where you'd probably use the operating balance method. And for cum funds, or if you're wanting to hit a target tax rate, then probably use the rate method. And once you have selected the method here, you just go down to the cell next to the method and then enter the amount that you want. So in this case here, they're selecting the levy method, and they went down and they put the $2.5 million in the levy line. Once we have performed that calculation, we will present the information that we have used to show the levy, the net assessed value, and property tax rate, and we'll lay that out in information so you can see it. And again, down on C, it shows how that tax rate is calculated. Levy divided by NAV times 100. Another entry you'll have to make is the estimated property tax impact. This amount will no longer be presented on the Form 1, but we still have to consider the amount. This will always be entered as a negative because it is a loss of revenue. I think if for some reason you do enter a positive number in there, I think the calculation does look at it as a negative, so it will subtract it out. And then for schools who are planning to do transfer, they will need to enter their amounts here in this section. In the first column, you would enter the transfers for the first half of 2020, or for the last half of 2020, excuse me. And then the second column is where they would enter transfers for all of 2021. And in this slide, we do have the wrong date up at the top in column 2. It should be 2021 and not 2020. Okay, and the last one is an override for the 2021 budget. We know that in some cases a unit may have to change the budget amount quickly, especially a county unit when you go into your meeting and someone at the last minute wants to change something. Then this allows you to option to go in there and change that budget so that it automatically changes and it'll override the Form 1. So all you need to do is go in and check the automatically populate budget Form 1 to no, and then go down and type in your amount that you want to override. And that would be the budget total, not just the line item. So to summarize, most of the data that flows into the Form 4B will come from other forms, but the unit will manually have to enter the net assessed value, the method that they want to do their levy rate or operating balance, and then they do have to put in the property tax caps, and for schools, the transfers out. So this brings us to the frequently asked questions. The first one only applies to a few units in the state, as previously stated. We do have some counties that have lit levy freeze, and there's only 12 of those in the state. You will notice that the line that you had to report your portion of this information, which on the old form was line 8B, is not on the revamped Form 4B. This will now be treated as a revenue on the Form 2 and no longer entered on the Form 4B. So on the Form 2, we used to have the column B, or the second column, blocked out for revenue code R105, but now that is unblocked, and you'll just use that column for that amount. Okay, on line 7B and 16B, we talked about a little earlier. They are both labeled reserves. Okay, so we currently use those as a placeholder. If you look at line 7A and 16A, there are two distinct things that are being combined into one amount. We are combining the transfers out and the temp loans. So in year 2, we will be separating these two items. We just didn't want to do that this year because in order to do that, that information comes from the current year financial worksheet, and we didn't want to revamp that this year, and we didn't want to have too many changes too fast. So that is a thing that's going to happen in year 2. Okay, so what happens next? This slide is coming, presentation is coming from an older presentation that was done back in March. So some of these items have currently already occurred. So But basically, the Form 4B will be the centerpiece of a lot of our communication over the next several months. So from start of the budget process to the end of the budget process, we'll be talking about this new form so that everybody knows and understands the changes that we have implemented. We have posted video and PowerPoint and a couple of workbooks on the website under continuing education on the subject of the Form 4B. You just need to go to our website under our continuing education section. You can go to the webinars and scroll down to the March 18th 4B presentation. And there, I think you would hear Mr. Fred Van Dorp give a similar presentation on the Form 4B. And then in the month of April, the department has released a workbook that puts the old Form 4B next to the new Form 4B. And this workbook has every unit's 2020 budget information in it. So if you want to go in there, you can select your unit. It'll put all your 2020 information in there, and then it will, next to it, put the numbers in the new Form 4B template so you can kind of see the difference. They also released a blank 4B template. I will share these two things at the end of the slideshow if I have time there, but you can reach those through that under the webinars section. Okay, also units need to start familiarizing themselves with the new Form 4B for the upcoming budget season. Units can contact their field reps through email or phone calls if you have any questions over the new form. And the department will continue to release frequently asked questions as more come in. Here on this slide, if you have any questions, this page gives a lot of different ways to contact us or places to go. We have the website where you can go get a lot of information from there. We have the contact us on our website. There is also a budget field rep map. So if you don't know who your budget field rep is, just go to that map and that will list out who they are. It gives their email and phone number there. And then as we're doing anything with Gateway, we do have Gateway support there. And then we also have a place for customer surveys. So if you have any comments or would like to say anything about any of this or any of us, feel free to do that. Okay, so now I am going to try to put on this other. Okay, can you guys see that? Okay, all right, so this one here is the comparison template. So basically over here on the top, you can put your county, select your unit, select the fund that you're wanting. It's going to put over here your amounts from the old Form 4B. And then over here, and I'm going to put that a little bit smaller, it will transfer all those amounts over into the new template so you can kind of see how that's all going to come together. And then this here is the actual template for the Form 4B. It's got the data sections that will be put in. You can select your the information that you need in the middle, and then over to the right, we'll make that a little bit smaller. Oops, too small. But it will then pull everything over into the Form 4B for you. So that pretty much takes care of my presentation. I hope this has given you a great insight on the changes that we've made on this form. Hopefully everybody thinks that it has done a good job, and it's going to give you a little bit better presentation of your information and so forth. But thanks, everyone. Thanks to the State Board of Accounts for having me on, and you guys have a great day, and be safe out there.
Hey, Robert, we do have a couple questions.
Okay.
I think they have to do with the form. So once, one of them is, once the net assessed value is entered, will it populate for all funds?
In this case, I'm not for sure on Gateway if that's going to do it. If you're doing the individual form, you would have to enter that for each fund, because it's going to be a separate form. Now, I'm not for sure on Gateway if that's going to populate. I would imagine it would, but I haven't seen that part yet.
Robert,
Okay.
if I may.
Oh,
Go ahead, Fred.
welcome, Fred.
Sorry, guys. Got stuck in traffic trying to get to the webinar. The plan is not to default that information in while at the county level, most of your funds are tied to a single AV. For some of the other units, multiple AVs, if we default it in and they fail to override the amount that there's a chance they could be used incorrect AV for the fund. So from a population standpoint, Plan A currently stands to have units populate the AV associated with each fund that we are going to certify.
All right, we got a couple other questions here. Can the adopted budget be advertised and not the requested budget?
Brenda, would you mind shooting me an email on that one? I'm not sure I follow the question.
Yeah, I didn't understand that question as far as. Can we get some clarification on that?
I don't really have any.
Brenda, yeah.
Is it, okay. Can we, I don't know, I think it's from Brenda, so.
Brenda, can you give us more clarification on your question about the adopted budget versus the requested budget?
Sorry, give us just a second. You see anything else?
Does DOGF have an Excel template?
Yeah, I got that one, but I meant like, does Brenda respond or anything?
Let me clarify. Some counties advertise the adopted budget. I have always thought the requested budget needed to be advertised prior to adoption.
Well, I mean, when we're going through this, you're going to advertise the original requested budget, and then after or during the adoption, if they're doing a different amount, that doesn't have to be advertised. That's just being adopted on the Form 4. So that could be two different numbers. But originally, to start the process, they would have to advertise the original budgets that they were going to the county council with. Does that answer that?
Let me build on that answer. So one of the things that the department will be doing during the certification process is making sure that the adopted budget is less than or equal to the advertised budget. So if the two are the same, there's not going to be an issue. But if a unit advertises a budget of $100 and then later adopts a budget of $150, we're going to hold them to the 100 that they originally advertised.
All right, does the DLGF have an Excel template to send out of the new Form B?
Yes. Well,
What did I say, Form 4B, I'm sorry.
Robert debuted both of those forms. They are currently posted on the department's website. I will put a link into the chat box for the webinar page and for each of the two forms. The one that's designed to map over your 2020 information so that you can see it side by side in the old template and the new template. and then one that's absolutely designed as a sandbox, a place where you can play around and simulate what the gateway experience will be for the upcoming year. You can put in any numbers that you want to. You can select the levy or the operating balance or the rate method, and it'll take you from it'll work like Gateway will. It'll take you to the final product.
Will we have to populate the funds that are not certified by DLGF?
No, the forms are going to work just like they did last year. The same funds that were on the 4B last year will be on the Form 4B this year. The only thing we're doing is changing the layout.
I think
That was it.
that was all of the questions that came in. So we thank you, Robert, and thank you, Fred, for making an appearance. We appreciate you guys, and we thank Wes. I think he might have already left. But we appreciate it. I think at this time we're going to go ahead and break for lunch. We're going to come back at 1. Auditor of State, Tara Klutz, is going to start us off right after lunch. So please be sure to come back at 1 o'clock. We're going to leave the, WebEx open, so you can come and go as you please during that time, but it will still be available. Okay? So we'll see you guys all back at 1. Thank you.
Enjoy your lunch.
Yes. All right.
You, Ricky?
I hear you, Jamie.
Yeah, I don't think we want to.
Yay! I can hear and see you. Can you see me?
I
No.
don't see you.
Yeah.
We hear you though.
Do you have your camera turned on?
Well, you know what? I'm sorry?
Do you have your camera turned on?
Yes, and even the little lights on. Chip is over here. I'm at the office. And
Oh.
Chip, we are up in the conference room, and he's trying to make the big screen work, but the camera doesn't work there either.